Dave Stroud.
Okay, excellent. We have a new planning commissioner today, and we'd like to turn the time over to the city to swear him in.
I state your name.
I, Bryce Anderson,
Do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey,
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and that I will discharge the duties
and that I will discharge the duties
of my office with fidelity.
of my office with fidelity.
Welcome, Bryce. And Bryce just had his appendix out, so double welcome. He's a trooper for being here.
And if he wants to leave, he should be able to.
This is a public meeting, so we've set some time aside for public input. If anybody has anything they'd like to say that's not on the agenda or isn't of public concern, we invite you to come forward and state your name and address for the record and keep your comments to about 3 minutes. The time is yours. So nobody has any comments that doesn't have to do with the agenda. All right, we'll close public input at this time, and we will go into our agenda. This is item number 5. This is a business item. It's a preliminary plat for North Saratoga Center located approximately 2160 North Redwood Road. This will be presented by Sarah Carroll.
Okay, there you go. There's the location. It's there's 2 existing buildings there. So we have a auto store and a car parts store in that location. It's all currently owned by one property owner, and they would like to subdivide it so they can then proceed to sell it. So there's, like I mentioned, there's 2 existing buildings, and then they're creating 2 future lots that won't have any buildings on them at this time. These are the lot lines that you're seeing. Mostly what we're looking at, the RC zone requires 30,000 square feet for the minimum lot size. So we had to make sure that all of those meet that, and they do comply with that requirement. And staff is recommending approval.
All right, thank you for your presentation. Is the applicant here? Nope.
I don't see them.
Okay, that's fine. We'll open the time to the public. This is a public hearing. I'm sorry, this is not. This is a business item, sorry. So we'll turn this over to the Planning Commission for comments.
Well, I had a question. Won't those lots on Redwood Road part of them be unusable because of the drop in grade? Doesn't that go way down?
There is a drop in grade, yes. There's about a 8 to 12 foot change in grade right there. They'll obviously have to design around that situation. So potentially there may be retaining walls or things like that, or stepped development. It's not unusable, but they will have to design around the grade.
Okay. And we're not approving their site plan or anything?
No, so when the 2 lots that will now become vacant lots are developed, we'll see a site plan application for those later on.
Okay. Thank you.
Others?
Sarah, do you know if there's been any consideration of traffic flow from that city street onto Redwood, as far as like a ride out only? I think I just know travel through or past Harvest Hills, and there's frequently flashing lights. And as that community grows, do you know if they're going to do anything on Cambria Drive to try and mitigate that?
No, it's not anticipated to have a light there because of proximity to other future light locations. So that spot, at least I don't believe from my memory that spot is intended to have a light.
Okay.
However, there will be one further to the north, and as developments happen around it, we'll have cross connection between developments. So there will be other ways to get in and out of the site, years down the road when adjacent properties develop. there is this road just behind these called Stagecoach Drive. It's running just into the gray area that you're seeing on the map here, and that will help connect developments as well from, you know, an area that has a light. So it'll improve as development happens in the area, but we don't know what the timing on that will be.
All right, other comments from the planning commission? I had one, in the code criteria, it's just a little, I think it's an oversight. It says minimum height of structures is 50 feet. I think it meant maximum.
Oh.
So according to 19.04.10, the maximum height of the structures is 50 feet, not minimum.
That's correct. That's a good correction.
All right, any others? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to forward a positive recommendation to the city council.
Oh, you are the, wait, aren't they? No? Sorry, we changed everything, I'm confused.
I move to forward a positive recommendation to the city council for the North Saratoga Center preliminary plat with the findings and conditions in the staff report.
We have a motion?
Second.
We have a second. We have a second. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Sarah. Okay, let's go on to item number 6. Looks like you're going to present to us again for Nora, right?
I'm filling in for Nora.
Okay. This is a public hearing. This is a community plan for Jordan Promenade, located at Pioneer Crossing to 400 South and Redwood Road to the Jordan River. We'll turn the time over to you, Sarah.
Okay. So I have a pretty thorough presentation. So I'll go through it. If stop me, interrupt me anytime. So we'll have a presentation and then discuss the comments from the work session that was held on July 3rd, and then the public hearing, and then the Planning Commission will discuss it and then make a recommendation to the City Council. So here are the properties that we're looking at. They're zoned planned community.
Sarah, let me interrupt for a second. Marcus, trying to get our attention.
Can I apologize? I'm seeing a lot of people here for the next item on the agenda, I believe. Do we want to reverse those real quick?
Speak up a little bit. You guys have got mics and you won't even use them.
Sorry, I was saying,
Don't you want us to hear? You invite us and then you don't want us to hear?
I was saying there's quite a few people here for the third item on the agenda, and would it make sense to switch the two items from a crowd's standpoint?
If that's your request, we can do that. There's no problem here.
Oh, so one of the applicants is behind me, and they're still waiting for some of their team.
For the promenade?
No, for the one following, the Saratoga Dignity. So they said they're fine waiting.
Okay. Let's continue.
Okay. So it's zoned planned community, and the process in that particular zone, this particular piece is large enough for the city center district area plan, which was approved several years ago. And then, so the layers of the process, we start with the district area plan, followed by a community plan, and then the next application will be a village plan for the different phases within this development. And then this is from the code, the effect of the community plan. Essentially what I said, that the community plan will create vested rights for this particular property, and then the village plan will create another level of vested rights after the items that are approved with the community plan. This is the district area plan. It generally specified uses in this particular area, and so there's a list there such as traditional retail, or traditional neighborhood, regional retail, business park in small portions, and town neighborhoods. So there's a variety of uses listed in the district area plan, and this isn't something that has to be followed to the T. There's several options. These are 2 of 6 options in the district area plan for potential land uses in this location. As you can see on here, the majority of it is the dark orange and the sort of yellowish orange, and those constitute traditional neighborhood and town neighborhood, and then some commercial and office in there as well. And then this is the land use plan for this particular development. You can see residential development with a variety of housing types, schools, churches, parks, and then on this particular map, let's see, the gray areas are for commercial and mixed use. And then this here is showing how the parks and trails and open space will connect through the development and the types of open space that you'll be seeing. So there'll be a waterfront park, a hot springs greenway with interactive nature and wildlife opportunities, neighborhood and pocket parks, and then a trail network throughout the proposed development. And then these are examples of what you might be seeing in the development. So you see community gardens and trails and pavilions.
Question. You said we could stop you?
Sure.
Okay. As we review this plan tonight, do they have future flexibility on where things go? Like, or is it roughly, the school roughly goes there, the meeting houses roughly go there, the parks are going to stay where they're at?
So this will give us a rough idea, but not an exact idea. As they develop a village plan, we'll get more detailed information.
That comes in the 3 different village plans, or however many village plans they do?
Right, there'll probably be several.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And so here's an example of the townhome project that you're seeing in the plan, and then a single-family cluster-style development where they have shared driveways, and then just your traditional single-family detached, and the lots are going to range from 4,000 to 8,000 square foot with this product. So here's a typical single-family dwelling lot with, your standard setbacks. This particular layout has the garage back and the front of the home forward, closer to the street than the garage. And then here's the cluster option that we mentioned. And I know all of these have been discussed before. Later in the presentation, we'll go through your comments from the last work session. So here's a typical townhome layout. And then, so these are the comments, a quick summary of the comments, and we'll go through each of these on the next slides. These were the comments heard at the July 3rd meeting. So the guest parking for the cluster homes, there was a question about that, fire access to cluster homes, the house design options, and then setback inconsistencies, commercial areas that are wet right now, meaning there's a lot of water in those areas, pronghorns, ERU transfers, open space requirements and phasing, and then access to amenities during construction, and then cluster homes and the maintenance of the backyards. So we'll go through each of those. So the guest parking, the mountain location, the response that was received is that there will be 0.5 spaces per unit, which is twice the requirement. I'm not totally clear. I do want that. After we go through this, we'll give the applicant a chance to respond as well. I would like the applicant to clear up whether or not that's the driveway or not. And then the fire department access. The fire chief hasn't had a chance to respond to this. He's been extremely busy fighting fires. So we don't have a clear response for you yet, whether it's 150 feet to the front of the home or to any side of the home. I believe that's the question that was asked. And then the backyard maintenance areas, so they will be fenced, and it sounds like misinformation was given in previous field trips or meetings that those areas would be maintained by the HOA. However, the applicant would prefer that the homeowner maintain those rather than the HOA, since they will be fenced areas, not common areas. So then there was a question about the district area plan and the 30% open space, and why the district area plan allows 18 to 24% open space. So that was approved in the district area plan, and one of the reasons was the size of the property. So the district area plan came in with 2,800 acres, and one of the things that we focused on as we were going through that process was quality over quantity. So they do have a lot of flat land in the district area plan as a whole, meaning that a lot of their open space won't be sensitive lands. So there's other developments that have a lot of hillsides, and a lot of their open space ends up being sensitive lands, where this project didn't have a lot of that. We focused on quality, so meaning parks with a lot of usable amenities rather than a lot of native open space. And that's kind of the history behind why this district area plan has the 18 to 24%. And then the open space in the district area plan focuses on place type open space and gives examples of what that open space should look like and what type of amenities should be in it. and how to sort of make sure there's a lot of variety going on in the parks to cater to the different, age groups and things like that throughout the city.
So on that topic, just real quickly, I mean, keep in mind the new sports park that's going in, although not part of this application, is part of the DAP and is part of that overall area that was encompassed for. So, I mean, there's those elements that will tie in, not specific to this application, but overall within the DAP area, going back to your question last meeting.
Mark, is the DAP area all church-owned property?
It was originally. 180 acres has been sold to D.R. Horton, 80 acres up north has gone to Boyer, and then the remaining parcels are still governed, within that DAP. So, I mean, we're down to probably something close to 2,550 acres total right now, maybe 2,500 if you subtract out the ball fields. So there's still a tremendous amount of land in the DAP.
When the developer buys land, do they buy vested rights?
Yeah, that's part of what they're inheriting with,
Right.
with their purchase.
Okay. And when was the DAP executed?
2009?
Okay.
No, I apologize, 2010.
Was that
2010.
10?
prior to Prop 3 and 6?
Oh, long before.
Long before that, right?
Right.
Several years prior.
Okay.
The annexation agreement is what granted them their vested rights as far as density is concerned. And that was 2009, and the
Okay.
DAP was 2010, so.
Got it.
kind of-
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, back to you.
Okay, so then there were questions about open space and phasing and not getting behind to make sure that each phase had adequate amenity. The response in the resubmittal was that that will be dealt with each village plan, and that they can specify, with the village plan, what those open space obligations are going to be and make sure that each phase has usable space. Another concern was, while things are under construction, getting to the open space, if there's construction in the way or things like that. So we could ask for additional language regarding that, or you could discuss it further. I don't know that there's necessarily been a solution discussed at this point. Part of the nature of development is that that's going to happen at times, but it is possibly something you may want to discuss further. So ERU transfers, that's been added, and what's been added matches the code. And then housing design. So this says a more nautical theme, but was that for this development? That wasn't for this, right? That was for North Shore? Okay, I don't think that's an accurate change. Was there any question on housing design with this project, or was that? Okay, I skipped that one. Setback inconsistencies, they've changed the diagrams and text to match, and then pronghorn, so there was a question about the wildlife study and it not addressing that. In the responses that the pronghorn do not appear to have a critical habitat in that location. And then the commercial node in the area that's currently wet, so it's got a lot of water on it. The response to that is that what's happening is the irrigation from the farming is leaving that wet, and that can be, once farming stops and development occurs, there won't be so much water on that property. And then there's several options for a motion. There's an option for approval with the conditions listed here, and those conditions are that they meet the engineering requirements and the fire department requirements, including, access related to the cluster homes, and then that the village plans address proportionate open space and phasing, and that the community plan be edited as directed by the Planning Commission if there are edits recommended. And then also the village plans must be approved for each phase, which is a code requirement. And then there's also the option to continue or to make a negative recommendation.
Thank you for your presentation, Sarah. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Would you like to come forward and join us, please? And if you can have a seat if you like, and if you'd like to state your name and address for the record, even though we just saw you last time. Some people might be tuning in for the first time.
Thank you. My name is Scott Thorson with Oakwood Homes. Our corporate office address is 4908 Tower Road, Denver, Colorado. I've got Josh Rowland with LAI. You don't have to add your address, right? I'm with you. Okay, he's with me. We also have with us Bruce Rao with Oakwood Homes, and Ryan Smith, the division president with Oakwood Homes.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton and Mr. Rowland. Did you want to add anything to the presentation today?
I think we have a similar approach to Sarah in doing a quick summary of the items that we heard at the work session and give you some more detailed responses based on the response letter that we provided. Would you mind open? It's in the top folder. Thank you. Okay, so we've got 2 slides here with some detailed information. I just want to run down the list here, and then obviously we're here to answer additional questions and provide clarification as well. There were some minor discrepancies and some lot typicals that we cleaned up, specifically towards accessory structure setbacks. We are consistent with the code now at this point. Part of the discussion about the fire access was widening some of the alleyways for the townhomes. We have widened those to 26 feet on our lot typicals. We did add a ERU transfer section to the community plan so that that issue can be addressed both internally between villages as well as externally to future development areas in the DAP. I think we successfully explained and discussed the issues surrounding the commercial mixed-use area along Pony Express. We provided some further references in the community plan that show a natural resources map that identifies some specific ponds where we're not showing commercial development that we anticipate will be wetlands, and then the item that Sarah had discussed about some of these other wet areas anticipated to dry out with the farming practices ending are not part of those more sensitive wetland spaces. So just trying to create that distinction there. The open space management plan, I think there's just one specific area in our plan. I'm going to jump ahead real quick to the, actually the land use plan shows it well. When you look at the breakdown in our Village 1, which is the southern portion, Village 2, which is the northwestern portion, and Village 3, Village 2 does show less open space than Villages 1 and 3. The point of the community plan is to show this entire area and how it meets the intent of the district area plan and its open space master plan. So, we feel like we're going to be above and beyond the requirements for this project as a whole. We've identified Village 2, it has the school site which contains areas for park and open space, which is identified in that district area plan as usable, accountable space. I can tell you that our 18 to 24% does not include the school site, so there's a good 5+ acres of open land on that school site. It's been very intentional that we are focusing our resources and our quality open space along the Jordan River and our Hot Springs corridor, but we feel like we're also responding appropriately, providing neighborhood parks and pocket parks in other parts of the community. So while we might be a little light in Village 2, we are over providing in the community as a whole. We've offered that either teaming with the city on potentially improving a light watercraft put-in at the RC Airplane Park during our earlier phases is a potential option for keeping up with the open space, as well as potentially improving portions of the Jordan Promenade Waterfront Park if during the village plan we deem that Village 2 just needs a little extra to push it over the line.
When you say 18 to 24%, doesn't include the 5 acres of the school. Is the 18-24% is that collectively in the 3 villages or just in Village 2?
Well, I think the question has been, are you doing 18 to 24% consistently in each village? And the answer is Village 2 is a little light.
Got it.
It might be 15% as a standalone development, but this isn't a standalone development. It is the entire 300+ acres that we're dealing with here. So. But I think we're willing to look at other opportunities to make everybody feel comfortable about how we're phasing open space.
And, I mean, we thought the Jordan River presented a unique opportunity to do something really special all the way along the river. And so that's why there's such a focus along the river and along the hot springs.
And to Scott's point, one of the things that we've done as a city is we've been looking at our waterfronts and how do we embrace our waterfronts, and we've been looking specifically at communities that have great waterways, and we've talked with them about how they can incorporate some of those ideas and designs in to make that waterway something special. So I think that they're going to be going definitely the direction that we've been anticipating as a community about enhancing the Jordan River corridor, the lakefront corridors, and things of that nature.
Thank you. Scott and Josh, did you have any other presentations to add to this? Any other things?
We just had a few more items to wrap up here.
Okay, go ahead.
There were some questions that I believe Commissioner Steele and Kilgore had about the archaeological artifacts. It's interesting. They really scour the databases. That was a kind of an obscure reference to an old utility easement and some old pieces of glass from insulators. So it was deemed to not be a contributing historical factor. So it's more informational than anything. But
it's just old?
It's just old.
Like dirt.
We got some follow-up information about the pronghorn from our wildlife specialist. The Department of Wildlife does not designate it any area as critical habitat for pronghorn, especially not this site. And there are no stipulations that constrain land development within Utah related to the pronghorn. So that was their additional info they provided us. Because there was a lot of discussion about the Carriage House product, we just wanted to revisit it real briefly. Wanted to confirm with you that the CC&Rs do require homeowners to maintain the backyard landscaping and the use easement areas. The CC&Rs will require that actually, the CC&Rs allow the HOA to actually conduct maintenance and any repairs as necessary and bill the homeowner if there are any issues that the homeowner's not cooperating with. And we are looking at offering the option to purchase HOA maintenance of the rear yards as an option as well. The lot typicals, we talked a little bit about the shared parking. I can show you here after we finish this slide the updated version of the lot typical. We moved some property lines around and just clarified where that parking space goes, so it's much more clear both in the paper documents as well as visually that it's a shared space and not associated with one home or the other. Our lot typicals have also updated the fencing and use easement diagram, so that'll be our typical format that shows where fencing goes and how that relates to property lines and use easements. And then lastly, we've been dealing with the utility companies, and we have adjusted some front yard setbacks to make sure we're going to be able to successfully provide gas and electric utilities in the front yards and how they interact with city water and sewer utilities. So that is the extent of our discussion today. We're here to answer questions, and we appreciate all the help that you provided throughout this process, the guidance, and we respectfully request your approval and moving us forward to City Council.
Thank you very much. You did a great job in recapping all of the things that we talked about in our previous meetings. We did see those in our packets, and thank you for sharing those with the public today. This is a public hearing, so we're going to open up public comment for item number 6. This is the plan for Jordan Promenade. If you'd like to come forward and give any thoughts or ideas or concerns that you have, we invite you to come forward now. Okay, given that we don't have any, we're going to close public comment. We're going to open this up to the Planning Commission for comment. Commissioner Steele.
I have a question. Will Village 1 be where you started?
Yes, that's our first phase. The south half is what we're looking at. Our first village plan will be the entire area shown as Village 1, south of Pony Express.
Well, I need stuff, but not camp. But under our current code, there is something that talks about easement corridors. Now we have no
Development, thank you. We have no definition for easement corridors. But what it says is required residential fencing. Fencing in residential development shall be placed along property lines abutting open space, parks, trails, and easement corridors. And so it makes it a little, we can't say that you're A-OK with your shared, your backyards at this time. We also know, and staff knows, that we have got to work on the language on that, because there's a lot of people in the city that don't really comply as it reads now. Well, we may need to put in something for easement corridors that changes this a little bit, but I did find that. So unfortunately, tonight, my feeling is you should go ahead because you have a good project. There's no doubt about that. And so, but we'll send it forward and tell the council to deal with it.
Can I ask a quick question about, and did you want to add something first? You know, the purpose of, as I understand it, of the community plan is to address any issues that you want to differ from the code on. Is that an accurate statement? I think because we have differences and some setbacks and some lot typicals, and so hopefully we can address your concern by the fact that we have these lot typical diagrams that show where we want to put our fencing and how it relates to lot lines and easements and things. And so if it does possibly conflict with the code, however it's interpreted, then I think we should be covered with the fact that we have identified how we're addressing it in our community plan.
We'll let the people who are higher pay grade than we are make
Sounds
that
good.
decision.
Okay.
And I think that's all I have.
All right.
I have just a couple of questions. Before I was on the commission, I participated virtually in the Planning Commission City Council work session that you had. And at that time, in Phase 3, on the very top on Pioneer Crossing, you had a large apartment complex, I think. Is commercial mixed use still, is that still apartments up there? What are you envisioning up there?
I don't envision, I mean, you were quite clear that you did not, this was the gateway into the, into the city.
I remember those exact words.
It was important that it not be apartments, and we had actually sized it so that you could do multifamily, and that's one of the reasons it was reduced. So it's not intended to be apartments, no.
Okay.
I mean, that was a pretty clear message from the very beginning because of the importance of the corridor.
Okay. And just for my own curiosity, what is a build-out schedule for all 3 phases?
You know, I would say if you think about getting if we were able to get an approval or gain approval this fall and start development, I mean, we'd like to build out the entire neighborhood or the community and all the neighborhoods in a 7-year period, so a 6 or 7 year period. So if you think about when we start, and I think we're together, and hopefully we've expressed this all along, you know, we're here for the long term with these homeowners, so, and with the city. I think 10 years, you really have to think about this as a 10-year neighborhood. You know, it's going to be a year before you really get started or you really start moving families in, and then you have a warranty period after you move the last families in. So it's probably a 6 or 7 year build out, but probably takes 10 years to reach the entire thing by the time you're all done.
And if I could comment on that, Chris, the development just south of this had a 5-year build out.
Right.
And they're going to hit it in about 3.
And are we preserving a transportation corridor through here?
Absolutely. That's the Pioneer Crossing corridor or the Pony Express corridor that you see through there. Yep. That's going to be a major east-west corridor, and that's going to be sized for kind of the build-out.
Will it be wide enough? I mean, I don't know what a proposed future mass transit would be.
It anticipates all of those things,
okay.
And so yes, there's
so BRT or tracks or something through that corridor.
Absolutely. The choke point on this, and we'll probably start off with a couple of lanes, but the choke point is really the bridge, and getting regional cooperation on that. That's not something we want to undertake as a city. It should be a regional discussion.
Okay.
The bridge
across the river.
Park. The bridge across the river.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and if you refer to our street sections in the community
Yep.
plan, we used your street section for Pony Express, which is a 180-foot right-of-way. It does show mass transit in the middle, and
So-
2 large buffers on either side.
Perfect. I really do appreciate, because I had to step out of the June 28 meeting, and I appreciate the official written response to all the concerns. That really answered everything I had. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, other comments? Commissioner Kilgore.
So, I'm not sure who to ask. Don't think it's the applicant in this case, but I'll ask the planning staff. What do the various state and local regulations allow the developer to do along the Jordan River? I guess, I'm wondering, since there's going to be trailheads, by the way, I love that. I love what you guys are doing. I just wondering what kind of regulations we have, since it's state-owned and I, living on the lake, can't do whatever I want. There's all kinds of regulations as to what we can do, and I was just wondering, with respect to Jordan River, what regulations there are. With the river access, trailheads provided, first of all, for example, is the riverside safe? What about erosion, bank collapse, or pollution into the Great Salt Lake, since the river drains into the Great Salt Lake, et cetera, and how, so I was wondering if you know what they're going to have to go through, what kind of hoops they're going to have to go through.
Yeah, if I can jump on that. So like the boat put in the water access point, that actually is being designed right now with a grant that was given to us through the Jordan River Commission and through the state. And so we work very closely with them. They're excited for us to create more access points along the Jordan River. So we're working hand in hand with them. If you think of the amenities that are already on the east side of the river, there's already a trail corridor, there's already an RC park, there's already amenities all along that are trying to bring people into this recreation corridor, and so it will be comparable to that. And so luckily the east side of the river has already kind of resolved a lot of those issues from erosion corridors and different things like that. So we'll be working closely with them on those types of issues. But from a fundamental standpoint, we're not proposing anything that would in any way degrade the Jordan River. Historically, it was, and I hate to say this, but it was a canal, and an irrigation canal, and its prominence has been treated like that. And part of what we're doing as a city is trying to embrace that, improve it, and restore it back to something spectacular. As an example, the river corridor through the downtown of Boise. If you go there today, it's phenomenal with trees and all kinds of amazing amenities. If you go back to the 1970s, it was barren. All the trees were removed, and it was absolutely a blight in the community. They had slaughterhouses early in the century and in an industrial area, and it was a mess. And if you look at what they've been able to accomplish, those are the types of things that we as a city are looking to do with improvements along that corridor, taking it from something that's fine today and great, but by adding trees, by adding vegetation, by creating a more desirable location, we're going to make it a much more desirable park, comparable to what other communities have been able to embrace in restoring these natural features.
Well, and as far as the process is concerned, our engineering department works with the state and the federal agencies in getting those approvals. So we are very familiar with that process, and we ensure that the applicant, the developer goes through those steps and files all the applications and gets the necessary approvals for those.
So is the are we the applicant for when it comes to improving the riverbank, or is the developer there?
They make us sign as the applicant, but we make the developer do the groundwork and do all the studies that are necessary. If there's any wetlands, they have to do their wetland studies and all that. So, but eventually we will sign the permits.
Okay. Yeah, because like West Jordan has the river going through their office parks, and it looks really great and everything. I was just wondering what it took in order to do that. If it was the individual developers for the office buildings, or if it was the city. So I guess I think you've answered my question.
We also have representatives from the city on the Jordan River Commission, which is largely the entity that's coordinating those efforts.
Okay, that's great, because right now, there are a lot of folks who are fishing along the Jordan River, and you can see as they walk along the banks, getting close to the river, the banks erode and it crumbles and the edges fall through and everything like that. And just hope that, I don't know if it requires shoring up or what, but just making it so that it is accessible without eroding the banks. But
Take off my attorney hat now, just as a resident, this is an amazing amenity that we have. This is the only portion of the Jordan River that hasn't been widowed down because of all the canals. This is prior to the dam, so you've got full width of the river. It's a pretty amazing amenity that we have.
I wish it won't take 7 years to do it.
Commissioner Kilgore, I have a follow-up. If the city's the applicant on that, is that public access, or is it in the private HOA?
The trail corridor, I believe, it will be a public easement for the trail corridor. As far as some of the open space amenities, they may be private, but those are details that we're going to be working out in later phases as we continue through the process.
Okay, so things like the boat, small craft launch.
The small craft launch would actually be over in the RC parking lot. We'd utilize the RC parking lot.
Got it.
And use that as the boat launch area. And part of the value of that is they need to potentially get ahead on some open space early on. We could add that amenity now, which would give them points for their amenities and what they're trying to do with amenities, and we can capitalize on designs that we've already created and move forward with our projects.
So RC Park, they'll get credit for that amenity, but it'll be public. Okay.
Well, and the state will attach that as a condition, the Lake Shore Trail, that was a condition of allowing that encroachment was you have to approve this trail and also have there be public access.
My last comment, it's just a bookkeeping. In the minutes that were attached as an exhibit, on line 361, there's a reference to something that actually Mark Christensen had said. So city manager Mark Christensen responded that he thought UDOT would be adding one more lane in 2012. So I don't think it was 2012, but I don't remember what the year was.
Retroactively, they will not go back and install that. I can assure you of that, unless Back to the Future is more accurate than we thought.
Yeah, they might have a time machine.
I'm actually thinking, I believe it's in a funding cycle for around 2020, 2021, so maybe we reverse those numbers.
So I think it's just that correction, and then that's also in our regular minutes as well, same line, 361. And that's it for me.
Okay. Any other comments? Did you have some? Okay. I just had a couple. Okay, the community garden. I'm just curious, how committed are you to doing the community garden? Because we've seen other large ones come in and they say they're going to do a community garden and then we never saw the community garden. Just curious about that.
So, our intention is to do one. When you say how committed, you say you would refer that we not do one, or you'd like to see us follow through and do it?
I don't think my opinion matters. I was just wondering if you're going to do it, if you're really going to do it.
Yes, our intention is to really do it.
Okay. What's the current status of the flood zone for this property? Does anything change since our last meeting?
Was there a specific question from the last meeting about the flood zone?
I think so. We were talking about you were having you had to mitigate a flood zone to be able to construct all of this because...
There's a small portion of the Village 3 eastern edge that has the 500-year flood zone, and that allows you to develop in as long as you import fill material and bring the elevations up. And so maybe that was where the question was directed.
Did you have to work with the Army Corps of Engineers or anything to do that? Okay.
On that, real quickly, we did that when we modified Tickville Wash a number of years ago, and that revision has taken place. So there was
that large pipe that goes through
D.R. Horton's property mitigated most of these areas, except for the corridor along the river.
Thank you. Okay, in one of your studies for soil, it said that they found 33% oil and grease and 1% of diesel range organics and the suggestion was to bury it a foot underground in a different part of the property. I'm curious why we wouldn't go forward and do something like thermal treatment or some way to mitigate the ground that's been destroyed, instead of just burying it. Maybe you could touch on that.
You know, those are recommendations provided to us. I don't think it constitutes a resolution to exactly how we're going to handle it. But you'll hear about this again during the village plan when we're in those affected areas, and we'll have to be much more specific at that time about the remediation.
Okay. So,
and unless it is something massive, typically it's easier, you know, and simpler for all for us just to remove it, you know, to treat it appropriately. I don't recall a reference or the size of the area. I mean, if it required something different than that, then we'd obviously have to be, you know, in front of everyone to make sure that that was acceptable.
right, that was my next question. We know what the concentration of the grease and the oil was, but we don't know how many yards it was. So if it was small, then yeah, be better than burying it. What is a Ute ladies tresses habitat?
That's a species of plant that I believe exists predominantly right along the bank of the river.
Okay.
And that's actually not on our property, but it was in the study area because they did the study all the way up to the water's edge.
Okay. Does that study also apply to those 3 animals that I think it was suggested that construction not be done in phase, is it 4, during their mating habitat time?
Yeah, they're, and we'll continue to keep our habitat and environmental consultant on staff, if you will, to provide, you know, advice as we move forward. If there's a nesting season we're trying to grade, they'll come out and clear the site before we do any grading activity. So it's kind of an explorative process where, you know, there's a potential for those, that this habitat has a potential to see that type of species. It wasn't necessarily identified in situ, but, you know, they'll come out and study it, clear it before we start doing grading.
I'm not so serious. I might sound more serious, but I was at a trivia. I wanted to know if you knew when the time was for their mating season.
Well, I read that report also, but I didn't put it to memory. So
because I did study it, and I found out when the times were. I just wanted to know if you guys knew. Anyway. I wanted you to know that.
You gotta tell us now.
You know that I read it. But there were 3 different, there was the burrowing owl, the Lewis's woodpecker, and I think you had one other one, the American white pelican, which the pelican, I think, is more interesting because it's kind of a symbol of our area, and I wanted to make sure that their breeding wasn't messed up. You know, we do specific code things for these mink that are in our area. We don't flash headlights at them during their breeding season, and that's a commercial business. I just wanted to make sure we're taking care of the wild habitats as well. All right. Sorry to be so difficult. I think those are all my comments for you. And if we don't have any others, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion. I move to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the Jordan Promenade Community Plan with findings and conditions in the staff report, with the addition of a note to the City Council that they further explore the landscaping and fencing requirements in Development Code as it pertains to 19.06.09.7 required residential fencing.
We have a motion, excuse me. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Is there a question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for your time this evening. Okay, I think we're going to move right along. Let's move into item number 7. This is a public hearing. It's a rezone, approximately 1.33 acres from agricultural to RR, located at approximately 1538 North Foothill Boulevard. A rezone for 5.1 acres from RR and agricultural to R19, located approximately 1590 North Cozy Lane. a general plan amendment for the portion of this property from rural residential to low-density residential, a rezone of approximately 16.29 acres from A to RR and RC to MF10, and residential to high-density residential. I'm going to turn the time over to Sarah Carroll for our presentation.
Thank you. Okay, so here we go. As you mentioned, there are 3 rezones requested with this proposal, and then 2 general plan amendments requested as well. So these maps right here give a summary of what's being asked. And so there will be 2 large lots left with existing homes on them, and then they are proposing R19 with several lots on a portion of the property, and then the MF10 zone for a senior community. Here's the concept plan, kind of with those areas in different colors. So you can see the light brown there in the middle would be the senior community. The buildings that you're seeing are all 4plexes. So there's 4 units in each building, and then you're also seeing a clubhouse and an assisted living facility and a swimming pool. And so the 4plexes will have driveways on both sides, and then they actually have an access in the center that a service care provider could enter the home. So here's the floor plan right here, and then you'll see right in the middle there an access corridor, so that, you know, if somebody needed a housekeeper or a nurse or something like that, that they have a corridor that they could enter privately. Here's a close-up. There's some comments in the staff report about guest parking. So I cropped this section of the concept plan. You can see that the guest parking is at the end of the long driveway. So technically they are meeting the code with the amount that they're providing. It's 0.25 per unit, so that'd be 1 per 4plex. And you can, as you can see, there's 1 per 4plex shown. However, it doesn't address the situation where, you know, unit A has 4 guests at one time. Where did those 4 people park? Or unit A and B have 2 guests at the same time. Where did those people park? And the comment from the applicant was that they could park in the driveway because there are driveways here as well. However, you can see that the guest parking may be difficult to get to in some situations and may seem as though there's not enough in other situations, even though they're technically meeting the code. So staff's recommendation, just to make the guest parking more accessible, is to put it closer to the street and to put a few parking stalls, you know, near each other. So perhaps 4 or so near the street, so that if those at the back are taken or hard to get to or blocked or things like that, that there's guest parking available when visitors come. Here's another part of the project that I zoomed in on, the assisted living facility. So it's interesting because our code doesn't have a specific parking requirement for assisted living facilities. It says to be determined by the Planning Commission, and then there are criteria in there that you look at to determine that. And mostly the applicant is responsible for providing studies of similar situations and projects. And so what they provided was that it resulted in this needing 21 parking stalls, and obviously this has to be agreed to by the Planning Commission as well. So they are showing 21 stalls, however, they are not showing accessible stalls, which would reduce what they're showing here, because you would need the van loading, you would need the loading area. And then they're also not showing, so the parking stalls that are kind of wrapping the curved street, if you have more than 10 in a row, you need a landscape island. So based on the need for accessible stalls and a landscape island, it would result in 3 less than what you're seeing here. And then they may actually want to consider additional accessible stalls for an assisted living facility, you know, for those seniors that may be in wheelchairs or walkers or things like that. So we are recommending that additional parking be added and that they also meet the code. And as you can see, they're a little tight on space right there. Another item we need, the applicant would like feedback on, is they are proposing a cross-section that's not in our city standards and specifications. We can allow this through a development agreement when we do the rezone. So we do have a few comments on this, though. They're proposing 26-foot wide asphalt. Our fire chief's comment on that is if there's no parking on the sides of the street, that could be permitted. As you're aware, we recently upgraded our street standards from 26 feet of asphalt to 29 feet of asphalt, so that when cars are parked on the side of the road, a fire truck can still get down the road. That was the reason for that change, for safety reasons. And so if they are proposing 26 feet, that does come into the discussion of if you don't allow parking and the guest stalls are at the very back of the driveway, you're really limiting, you know, how many guests you can have at one time. So the whole building with 4 units can have 1 guest at a time, essentially. And then with this particular, sorry, let me go back to the street cross section. So if the asphalt's wider, they could allow cars to park on the street, however, I don't know if they want to. And then our city standard, they've got a 5-foot sidewalk shown. The city standard would require 6-foot sidewalks and would require curb and gutter on both sides. They're showing it on one side, and then the asphalt is flush with the sidewalk, so there's no curb and gutter. And the reason for that is to reduce tripping hazards in the community. I believe that's what was explained to me, and the applicant can talk about that more. So if this were to meet city standards, the asphalt would need to be wider, there would need to be curb and gutter on both sides, and then the sidewalks would need to be wider. This has been, this is something they are aware of, however, they wanted to get feedback from the Planning Commission and Council and make their own proposal regarding why they want this street cross-section. Another thing, it's all sloping to one side, so generally a street crowns in the middle and the storm drain goes to both sides. And from an engineer, we talked about this in our development review meeting with our city engineer, and he did not have concern with it sloping to one side and storm drain being on one side of the street. However, he was concerned that it wasn't meeting the widths in the city standards. And so we would like, the applicant will need feedback on those 3 topics specifically. And so here's a summary of the staff's comments on the concept plan, and that they meet all the engineering requirements, that they locate the guest parking central to the units rather than at the end of the driveways, that some of the guest stalls be accessible stalls, you know, so that any visitors who have that need will be able to get in and out of their vehicle. Number 4, the accessible stalls are required for the assisted living facility. And number 5, 1 landscape island is required for every 10 stalls. Number 6, the Land Use Authority approves the parking requirement for the assisted living facility based on the criteria in the code, and initial feedback is that there's not enough parking for this facility. Number 7, additional items will require further review of the site plan. So there's a lot of items in the code that we don't review with the concept level submittal that will be reviewed further. And then the plan shall comply with the code. And then there's a recommendation for approval on the rezone and general plan amendments as described.
Thank you for the presentation. Is the applicant here? Good afternoon. Could you introduce yourselves with
All you guys.
names and addresses for the record, please? We're doing well, thanks.
Great. Mark Hampton. I reside in Lehigh, Utah. This is Ted Didis from McNeil Engineering.
Yeah, Ted Didis, McNeil Engineering, Sandy, Utah.
So thank you for having us come. We really are seeking your advice and approval and recommendations. As you can appreciate, we've been working on this a little while with some of the landowners that are here tonight and with some of the community that we've been working with. In the middle of our process, we found out that UDOT wanted to take some of our the landowner's property. So it stalled us a little bit when UDOT came in and took a big swath out of our available property. And we came back. We came back down with another design. Let me just introduce a little bit about who we are and what we do first. My history has been with senior living. Me and my partners developed Wentworth Senior Livings in Salt Lake Valley on the east side, which we sold, and then now we're doing the Covingtons in Utah Valley. We do assisted living and do a lot of it. Have done for 22 years.
We have a few campuses like this one. You may be familiar with some of our projects in an assisted living arena, one in Orem that's recently opened last year, and then one in Lehigh that's opening this month, there on State Street, and you may have seen those. This product's a little different than what you're used to or what the stereotypical senior living campus is. This is I call it gated, but it's not. There's no gate on the entrance. This is a private, age-restricted, HOA-governed community, private roads. We own the roads. We do the snow removal, landscaping. We provide it all, whether the residents are renters or buyers in our community, and they are both. In our community, it is age-restricted, and we try very hard. I wish I could get you all into one of our vans and take you to Lehigh or South Jordan, where we have this same community in place, in action, with real data on parking, on activities, and why we do the things we do, because it's hard to explain here when you haven't really seen what we've done. Let me try to articulate a little bit. In our communities, it's governed by members that live and reside in the communities. They access the clubhouse for many reasons. We have in the clubhouse a dedicated an outside entrance doctor's office. We have PT, OT, community services. We have birthday parties, everything you can imagine. Our residents reserve the clubhouse and the pool for their families, and they use them often. I would say that in Lehigh, I'll bet half the time it's used by some of the residents. Very crucial to us. Our assisted living that's there is under the Board of Health regulations and or licensing. It's called a small assisted living, meaning it used to be 12 or less Beehive type homes is kind of the model that you might be familiar with. We don't carry the Beehive brand, but it's a small community. It's a residential looking home. It doesn't live by the same large facilities that we build and we own and operate. Those are licensed by the Board of Health, and they're large facilities which require a lot more expense in the constructing of the facility itself. This is more residential, maybe like a Beehive home. It's very important to us because of our community and our residents that we do not have any trip hazards. I hope you can appreciate that. Our cross-section of our road goes one way, and Mr. Ted can tell us a little bit more how that works, but even walking into our homes from our garage or our front step has no step, no stoop, not 1 inch. It's all flat. We do not want to fall. We don't want to have any trip hazards, and so we do a lot of painstaking engineering to get our campuses and our sites with no steps. This unique property is really interesting if I'm you, because originally when that road used to go out to Cedar Fort, and that used to be like the corridor, I think it was master planned as commercial. Well, now the road that's on our south boundary line is a dead end, and there's no traffic, and I don't think it's going to ever be commercial. So we inherited a piece of property that had a kind of commercial base near the south end, residential base near the north end, and I think our product really fits there because we don't like traffic. We don't like noise, we don't like lights, we're dang good neighbors because we go to bed at 4:30 and we eat at Chuck-A-Rama at 3:30. So, I mean, we really are a pretty good community for an isolated project like this property. So we were excited about it. Your community on Arkansas says your community needs it. We came down through this, meeting with the residents by hooking our private road into Cozy Lane, if you're kind of following me to the north, and then it was discovered that staff and the city would like to have a connection to our east with a public road going into Cozy. So then we kind of carved off some of our property and made lots. We're not lot builders, we're not home builders. That would be a product that we would sell to somebody, but we don't want a public road going through our campus. We'll gate it all the way through, we keep it private, and so that's the crux of what we have here. That's why it's so many zones that are kind of combobulated in there, but I think it works good because of access. It allows access from our neighbors to the east into that exit onto Cozy, and then we have an entrance coming into our campus from the north and the south off of that private road. I'm just rambling on. Parking. It seems to me that parking is a major concern. And again, I wish that we could take you to the existing campuses that we manage right now and show you. We don't allow any pedestrian parking on the streets. We have 26-foot drive aisle. We met with the fire chief. He's approved it as is if we don't have parking. In our other facilities, we don't have the back, look, two or three stalls behind our residences. We don't have that. It's cool that we're agreeable to add those. But right now, you can go any time of day through our campuses that we have in existence, and there's never anybody parked on the street and never a backed up problem as far even visitors. Now, what we have is a 2-car garage in every facility, and between the facilities, we have, between the two fourplexes, if you call them fourplexes, we have, how many, 64 feet. And normal drive aisle, as you know, is 18, 26, 24, and 18, which is, we exceeded by 6 feet. So if you considered coming, does that make sense? Got a puzzled look. So between garages to garage, we have bigger areas than a regular parking area. So what I'm saying is we can park 2 cars in our garage, 2 cars outside of our garage, and now 2 stalls. So we have 5 stalls per home. We've never provided that many stalls, ever.
Could you clarify then on that?
How do I do that?
Can you see it up there?
From unit to unit, it's dimensioned on there as 64.
So where's the garage? The garage is where that...
Oh, yes, that's a good point.
Is the
Yeah, let me show you.
You have a pointer?
Pointing to the garage right now. I can.
Where?
Well, let me show you.
Okay, those are the 2 garages then?
So these are it's a 2-car garage, it's a 2-car garage, and our entrances are actually over here in front.
Why is that a 4-plex? It would be a 2-plex then, wouldn't it?
Well, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is actually 4 cars across here.
Oh, 4 cars. 2 cars per door.
And then we have an entrance to our back house services between the garage.
For those that are online, maybe the 1 or 2 people, if you could go back to the mic, that'd be excellent.
Just to point out, the 64 feet, what that's looking at, that's basically a standard parking lot in the city. You got 20-foot parking stalls, and if it's 2-lane, you got 24. So between those garage doors, that matches what you find in a standard parking lot.
That's our argument is that we have enough inside, outside, and now the additional parking. We have 5 stalls per unit. We'll never use that many stalls in our units. Most of our residents only have 1 car. So that's a good, so what I would suggest tonight is, and we fully endorse this. This is a concept. We'd like to get your feedback, but if parking is an issue, we will commission Mr. Harris, who just left, to do a full parking study on this, on all of our campuses, on this whole study, and come back and show you that I think we meet and exceed any parking requirements that are here and needed in our campus. We really don't want to, we'll never park on the street. We'll never encumber the fire marshal or fire chief to drive his truck down there. What am I missing, Ted?
Well, just in terms of the road widths, of asking for the consideration for 26 feet of width in lieu of 29, one of the philosophies that's going along with their desire to have this very neighborhood type of feel is to keep the roads as narrow as practical. I think we widen out the roads, typically encourages speeds. The wider you make the roads, tends to promote faster speeds. Keeping them narrow, yet 26 feet, we believe, I think the fire department has chimed in, is adequate for conveyance of traffic, for emergency access. Feels better to us than 29 feet of width on it. It just feels like a better use for this type of facility.
More intimate, and that's what we're after. Our community walks a lot. Let me talk about the services.
Hey, one other thing on parking.
I'm sorry.
In terms of having, maybe the other thing, could we go back to that fourplex or the unit type? That right there. So the doors to the units, as you can see, are on the same sides of the buildings that the garages are on, so that they would be facing one another. Having the people park in the driveways or at the ends of the units is more conducive to getting to the doors than parking out on the street. It's convenience of access. In our experience is, in most municipalities, wanting people's private parking to be off-street, in the driveways, in the locations off the street, to keep the streets as clear as possible.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry.
Part of the services that we offer in our communities is coming, that you may wonder about why assisted living center, small assisted living inside a community like this. Some of the things that we offer the residents in our cottages is meals, laundry, I think staff mentioned it, meals, laundry, medications, inside that back of house room that you see back inside the service corridor, we call it back of house. It's lockable if nobody needs it. If mom or grandma falls and needs care, it can come in the back of house. So all the senior care services, that's why our name is Dignity Care. We keep dignity intact with our residents because all the care, depends, don't walk in the front door, for instance. So it all comes, all the lifts and all the services, medications, and food and stuff comes in that back of house. That's a cool thing that we offer. I hope that makes sense to you why we're doing it. But the interesting thing, we can't bring in meals. We don't want to bring in meals from like Meals on Wheels. So we produce the meals in the AL, in the kitchen, in the commercial kitchen, and bring them to our residents if needed. It's all on the desire or on a need or desire basis. I'm just rambling on. What questions?
One other thing was addressing the concerns on the being short on the parking with the assisted living / clubhouse area. Could we go back to that plan? Yeah, right there. What we would propose to do to gain back the additional 3 stalls or so would be to just lengthen that overhead canopy that's at the assisted living drop-off area and add 3 or 4 more diagonal stalls under the canopy.
We've done that lots.
Does that make sense? We're saying the canopy would span a little further towards the sidewalk, which would give us the room to park under that.
We can get those stalls easily there.
All right. Well, I just sat here and listened because I think you're addressing all the concerns that we have, a lot of them. So I think it was really valuable, and I think that your experience and the data that you have, that you suggested you could provide, I think that would be valuable as well to the people who ultimately have the decision for this. So if you wanted to gather that would be helpful.
Great. At this stage, it's a concept, so we just need your feedback and the zone change. We'll provide that at site plan approval or subdivision plat. We provide it all, whatever you need.
All right, so we'll start with the questions in a minute, but this is a public hearing. David, do you want to clarify?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Maybe it was related earlier, but for the benefit of those in the audience, are these, each unit in the building, are they going to be for sale, or are they a rental?
Okay, there's a mix. There's a mix of that. Let me tell you. So Medicare and Medicaid can reimburse in some situations if the resident is a primary resident. Secondary home, no. Primary residence, yes. Doesn't matter if it's owned or rented. So some of them we have found in some resident situations they only can rent. Their assets don't allow them to purchase, and so we do offer some rentals that we own and we rent. But as long as it's a primary residence, some of those back of house services can build the Medicare and Medicaid, and so that's why it has to be their primary residence. It's not this isn't a rental field by any means. It's primary residence of seniors only.
Okay, so we're just going to go forward with the procedure. The next step of this is a public hearing. So we're going to open up the public hearing at this time for item number 7. And if you have any thoughts or ideas, please come forward and limit your comments to about 3 minutes. Hello.
She stands there.
Hi there, Marcia Pascott. Do you need address or any of that? Okay, 1578 North Foothill. And yeah, we're so excited about this. The idea of making it safe for older people has been, we've been here for 23 years, and we have wanted to do this all along, but it was never the right time. And the thing that we want to see is we're getting older, we want to live there, we intend on living there, and we intend on, at the point when we can't take care of ourselves anymore in our home, that if we can't and our children can't take care of us, that we could go to the AL. This is the only one that I know that has anything like this. And I'm so grateful for the safety issue here. I mean, they have safety issues on every part of this. But, like getting in, we can even have a basement We could even have an upper level for those people that can do stairs. You know, there is so much opportunity with Dignity. They have been a great group to work with. And I love the idea. I mean, I've been through many of these kind of fourplexes. I love the idea that they've got a separate wall between the two homes, the home one side and home the next, a complete wall between us. So you're not going to hear what's going on in your neighbor's house. Things like that. I mean, they've really looked into things that appeal to the older people, to the quiet, to the relaxed atmosphere, for the not driving cars. I mean, through our development. We're very, very wanting to have, and I know we have people right in this subdivision right now who are looking at building here and moving out of their homes because of the safety issues that are being addressed here. And we really, I mean, I know it's a private drive now, but we really would like to make it a gated community. So we have a much better stop right there of people coming through there, because these people are going to be walking. We're going to have a great big walking trails all over that place. We don't want them in the roadway where they have to maybe cross somewhere and someone running them down. We all know who live there, and I have for the last 23, what happens on Aspen Hills Boulevard. It is a nightmare, and we do not want to see this happen in here with these older folks that, you know, they're struggling with just walking and things like that. Why should they have to be bombarded with people from outside coming in and influencing their lives? Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you for your time. Any other comments from the public? Hello.
Delta Doyle, 482 West Andrews Lane. I think this is an exceptional idea. I only wish it had been in effect a little while ago for me. I had to have care of my husband for 24 hours, 7 days a week, and a facility like this would have been fantastic, because at times I needed help during the middle of the night. Instead of waiting for a half hour to an hour for a hospice nurse to come, I would have had instant help when I needed it. So for us that are aging, this is a fantastic idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Name's Danny Woodhouse, live 627 West Aspen Hills Boulevard. I have two quick questions. With the assisted living area, could you guys tell me how tall that's going to be? And where it's located, actually, if we can look at the map and see where it's actually really located on that map.
Hey, Danny, if you could ask all your questions, we're taking notes, and we'll address them after you're done.
Okay.
That way you get it all in.
Perfect. And then the other question is, going back on the plot map.
Wait, could you repeat the question? There's a couple of us didn't hear it.
Oh, sorry. So how big is the assisted living area going to be? How tall is it? What's the height on that? A lot of us that moved in on Aspen Hills, we did it because of the view. And then the location, where is the location of it going to be? I am for this assisted living area. I think it's a great idea, especially living where I do live. I'd love to have neighbors that aren't driving a lot, because Aspen Hills Boulevard is a nightmare right now, and I'm sure you guys have heard tons about that. And then my other part of the question I had was, why can't you guys move that assisted living area or a 55-old community over into Cozy? Why do we have to make that a cul-de-sac? What was the city actually asking about that? Why do we have to develop that into houses? And why couldn't we put a gated community right there? Because bringing in, if we put more houses, that's going to make Aspen Hills Boulevard even busier. And so I would love it if we could close that off where more people aren't coming into that neighborhood, because it's just a nightmare as it is right now. And if you guys want to address those, I can sit back down. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Danny. We will address that. Others, yes.
Good evening, Maria Medina, 1914 Tuscany Drive.
I'm sorry, what was your name?
Maria
Maria, hi.
Medina, M-E-D-I-N-A. As we all get older, and we all will get older, God willing, our families and friends sometimes become our family, because our families are busy with their jobs, their children, their activities, their interests. It's important for us to have a sense of community, knowing that our neighbor will be watching for us if we fall or if we have accidents or things like that. So the whole sense of community in this development, I think, is important. Having the amenities in the facility is also important because many people sometimes are limited. They can't drive sometimes. So having all these amenities within the community affords us a quality of life that we want to continue to have. The transition to the assisted living facility is also important because we probably have built the sense of community owning our homes or renting it, and then if we have to transition into the assisted living, we still have our neighbors who will probably come and visit us if our family can't. I do have a question about the assisted living. Is the medical going to be in-house personnel, or are they going to be coming into the facility, or is it going to be 24-hour care and so forth? Okay, that's a question I have. And the HOA costs, will there be, how much are they? Those are my questions.
Thank you, Maria. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll close public comment and we'll address these questions. So, let's see. Let's do last in, first out. Maria Medina said she had a question about medical in-house personnel or 24-hour care. Did you want to address that?
Yeah, thank you. So the answer is no, there's not 24-hour care. There's not 24-hour doctors on it's like any assisted, so the small assisted living, 12 beds, one story, down in the south end. That answers another question. So it's only one story, 12 beds in the south end of the project, not by Cozy. It's assisted living. Can doctors and PAs come in and meet our residents? Yes, they do often, but it's at the patient or the resident's desire or requirement. Now, we do have by the clubhouse on the site a dedicated doctor's office. It's only it's a receiving, 3 chairs and 1 small visitor office. And so, the reason we have to have an outside entrance for our doctors, there may be weeks that the doctor doesn't visit our site, but we have to have an outside entrance for that to be able to bill Medicare. So let's say mom or grandma falls and has a knee replacement or hip, and she goes into a transitional care facility and is dismissed to either go to an AL or go home. If she goes home, she gets home health and hospital, home health, not hospice yet, she's not dying, but home health. And part of that home health is she needs to travel to get back to see the doctor once in a while. We can bring the doctors in to our campus and still bill Medicare by having an outside entrance in a dedicated doctor's office. It's not used full-time, it's not staffed, it's not a doctor's office, it's just as need arises, and in some other communities it's just once a week.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's none. I'll also mention that the interesting thing about our campus is from the AEL, we have a wireless nurse call system that is wireless, so it reaches the whole campus. And so if desired for an extra fee, residents in a cottage that's clear at the north end of our campus, they can have nurse calls next to in their bathroom or by their bed, or even a pendant on them, and if they fall, we have a full-time CNA. The only staff that's going to be full-time is a CNA in the evenings, but during the evening, if there was a fall, we can be there to help and assist in the whole campus, not just in the AL. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Chapman had a question.
Yeah, I think several of us have the same question. On the concept map that we're looking at right now, it says the assisted living has 45 beds?
No, it's not even close, 12 beds. I don't know why that says that. show us where that is, because it's a 12-bed facility.
It shows 45.
Zoom in on the assisted living. On the,
so
this is page,
Okay, we apologize. That would never fit forward. There's not enough room for that. That's a 12-bed facility.
okay, so you're saying it's 12 beds and 1 story?
1 story, 12 beds, that's it.
Okay.
Clubhouse is also 1 story.
And that's why the confusion on the parking, now I get it.
Yeah.
I sent in a study that shows we need 4 to 5 stalls, and now you're thinking it's a bigger facility. I'm sorry, it's 12 beds.
Okay, back to Maria's second question. HOA costs?
Range from 115 to 125. Some of our campuses are highly landscaped, and they cost more during the summer. Snow removal goes up and down. It's just like any HOA, so that's where we're at.
Okay, other questions. Danny Woodhouse, he had 2 questions. How tall are these buildings going to be?
So the cottages are 1 story. They do have an option add if the resident wants to build a bonus room in the attic trusses. So the roof line doesn't go up.
What's the height of the building?
Oh, geez. Did we give you a plan? The eave height's the same as a 1-story residential house. And it's 612 pitch. So I don't know what the height is. I can get you that dimension. We have it fully.
Is that the same as the assisted living and clubhouse?
Clubhouse, excuse me.
No, that's 1 story.
They're 1 story as well. Yes. There's nothing on your 2 stories.
That's such a nice thing to have happen.
You're probably looking 20, 22 feet, probably.
Well, on the assisted living, it's going to be taller because I'm spanning further with that 612 pitch. You understand it, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the residents, yeah, I agree.
We love 1-story homes when you're trying to save a view.
Especially with cozy above us, yeah, they want to see the lake.
Okay, and the other second question is, why can't you move the area into cozy for the cul-de-sac?
Oh, let's talk about the cozy lane. So originally we had a design that we had preliminary submitted that included that whole area that's now residential lots as part of our campus. We discovered from staff that it's a requirement that a public road go through our property and over to our neighbors to the east. It's a requirement of you. We don't want a public road and the traffic going through our community. You can understand why. So we moved back our units, carved back our units of senior and added lots to accommodate the requirement of the city to provide a public street. And that's why. If we could make that a private area, I guess staff can address it. If we could make that a private area and not have cozy come through there or have the road go through, we would do it right now.
Is that access egress?
For the record, there are many people nodding their head yes in the audience. Go ahead, Commissioner Kerr.
I'm sorry, what was
Is that an access egress issue?
Oh.
Why is that required to be in a
connectivity code in the city that says you have to connect through?
Is that the Ken Adams project had that road going north to tie in there?
There's so just a couple of things to be aware of. I know that the residents on Aspen Hills have a lot of concerns about the amount of traffic currently going through their neighborhood. When Mountain View corridor goes through, this isn't going to connect anymore. So right now you have Foothill Boulevard, and it intersects right here with Aspen Hills, and people drive through here to get into different parts of Harvest Hills, and possibly, avoid larger roads or things like that. So you won't have this connection right here, and that's going to be, Mountain View corridor is in the works, and it's, I think it's on a 1 or 2 year build schedule, so we're looking at 1.5 or 2 years before all of that's done. So this connection won't be there. That'll help with a lot of the traffic questions that you're hearing about. This connection right here, there's already an existing stub street right here. I can zoom in on this closer. This is called Cozy Lane. And then, so there's already an existing stub street right here. There is a requirement in the code to interconnect. And the reason for that is so that the subdivisions interconnect, so that we don't have a subdivision that you can't get to from another subdivision. So if we have residents living here and residents living here, but then they don't have any way to get from this neighborhood to this neighborhood, that's the purpose for the interconnection requirement in the code, is so that it's for local street linkages. And you'll see, so right now you have traffic coming on Foothill Boulevard from all different locations and coming through here. That traffic will be using Mountain View Corridor instead, and so the traffic that you'll be see will be interconnecting between neighborhoods. It won't be the traffic that they're dealing with now.
See, another example of that too, just since we're right there in that neighborhood, would be this development here was supposed to come to you tonight by me, but the applicant informed me a couple weeks ago, I'm having trouble moving this, there we go. Initially they were just going to develop these two parcels here, and this parcel was left out. They've now been in talks with these people here to add that parcel now to this development, but initially we said, you got to stub that street to that vacant parcel there so that at some point they can develop and we can have the interconnectivity between developments. So it's just a means of transportation, foot traffic, car traffic, way to get cars out multiple locations and not concentrate them in on one or two streets. So that's why we require that.
There's another point of access on the south, right, by the assisted living clubhouse.
There'll be one right here.
So I can tell you as a resident of a private community, I can't stand this piece of code. I want my neighborhood to be private, and I think these people want their neighborhood to be private.
But you also have to have fire.
Yes, but fire and emergency personnel have full access to the neighborhood, even if it's gated. I'm saying then they have 2 points of access, and they could be private if we allowed it. What I'm saying is, if the residents in that community who pay for those roads, who pay for those properties, if they want to be private and they don't care that the neighborhood next to them has access, they should have that right, in my opinion.
And if their neighbor does want access, then who decides?
It's a private road. Why should they have access to a private road? Just like you live on a private road, why should anyone in the city have access to your private road?
Because we have city parks.
But you live on a private road. Where's the city park that gives them access?
This sounds like an excellent conversation for us to do in commission comments, or if we can actually have this as part of a noticed hearing, we can do that as well. So if you want it, we can instruct staff to put something on there that we can discuss it and have it as a work session. We could definitely do that. Right now, I think we need to focus on what's before us.
Okay.
So, all right. I think we've answered all the questions from the public, so I'm going to turn the time over to the Planning Commission to finish up our discussion.
Can I just make one observation, and then we'll let you have your debate?
Sure.
Just by way of economics, our studies have shown that if our residents buy one of our cottages, we call those fourplexes cottages, one unit in our cottage, and they leverage and they mortgage 100% of that, which oftentimes is the case, and then they commission us to provide all services, meds, laundry, cleaning, and meals, which is what, in essence, what you'll have in an assisted living, and you get the nurse calls. So they get all of our services coming from Dignity Care. It's cheaper than moving into an assisted living center just down the street over here that are $3,200 a month to live there. And so we think it's pretty interesting and pretty cool for us to have our residents, when needed, in a dementia situation, in a rehab situation, to have an ability to live in our AL and then go home and live with dignity. And that's really what we're trying to communicate. I appreciate your comment about our private little code of subdivision. We take pride in it. Again, before we come before you with our final subdivision plat and stuff, I want to schedule a little trip, a little field trip, and take you to a campus or two, because once you see it, you understand why this is so cool for us. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. We had one other question, I guess, from Danny.
There was a final question from Mr. Woodhouse, and that is the location of the assisted living on the plat. If you could point out the roads for reference, potentially.
The roads what?
It's at the very south end, the very closest.
Right to the right of her cursor, that cursor. Ooh.
Right there.
That's it right there.
So the UDOT facility, the dead-end road with the UDOT facility with the snowplows and stuff is across the street.
It is, and I'm noticing this is the first time I've seen the Mountain View Corridor Road coming. Ted and I were just talking about how we have to extend that wall on our west side to avoid the noise that's going to happen from the Mountain View Quarry. I didn't realize, I knew that UDOT was taking, I didn't realize there was going to be a road right on our fence line.
Yeah, so right now, this is a dead end, and it'll stay a dead end. So this was the old SR 73 before, Pioneer Crossing was built. And when Pioneer Crossing was built and SR 73 got rerouted, that dead ended, and it'll stay a dead end as well. So the access to this development will be off of that, and then the other access will be Cozy Lane, and the fire code does require the 2 accesses.
We like that. We like the quietness, except for the snowplow comment. I don't like that.
Okay, time for the Planning Commission. Commissioner Kilgore.
I was wondering how the assisted living facility and senior community fits in with the state's affordable housing requirements as well as with Prop 8. Is that something that we have to consider at all?
That's a question for the city, I think.
I've never been asked that question.
I can look into that further. I don't have the answers off the top of my head.
Okay, just wondering if it adds to the calculation. Is it considered affordable housing or is it considered not? And does it affect, since there's going to be multi-family housing, or well, basically like a duplex. I wonder if that's affected at all by Prop 8.
Yeah, so we have, I know we have several different categories, and I know that single-story attached is in a different category, but I don't know all that information just off the top of my head. I was hoping this dashboard would come up, and we keep track of all of the units in the city and the type and the percentages and everything like that. We have, current data. I didn't know it was password protected in here, but anyhow, I can.
My memory of the single-story attached that we're fine. Okay. We're way under that. We don't have much of that. It's like the
right.
part of SSD that has some of that.
Sarah, is that published?
That's the type we're talking about.
Okay. Are those statistics published on the city website for the public?
No.
So you can keep score. Is there any way that the public can see what it is?
I can
they
follow up
request
with
it?
Mark Christensen.
Okay, I think that would be valuable, and since it's such a public concern, that maybe you could publish that on a website or have that available so people can see where we are as a city.
I'm just for the applicant, we had the proposition, and so there are, we're watching how many multifamily type of dwellings, and it does depend on how many stories. So we're just keeping track in case.
Prop 8 is
It limits the amount of high-density housing in the city.
It's a city issue.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it before, I was just wondering.
Exactly. So sometimes, when you come in for your actual approval, there could be residents who come in to ask, where are we allowing it when we had Proposition 8? We want to be able to say that it falls within our limits, or, we just want to make sure.
We've talked about the density.
I'm sorry, Prop 6.
I thought we were okay on density, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've already we've had the conversation with the applicant about, because they're asking for a multifamily zone, and we knew that there might be concerns. So we talked about them being senior and 1-story and things like that. And why we thought it was okay for them to be asking for a multifamily zone. And that's the best zone for this particular use that's being proposed. We understand there's obviously concerns in general when a multifamily zone is asked for.
Okay. I just want to say that I think your development is sorely needed in our community, and I echo the comments that were made by the residents as well. I think it's terrific. I'm also pushing that age, and I don't want to leave Saratoga Springs either. So I like that there are options, and also it may attract other people to our city as well, because it sounds like the product that you're creating is just really nice. Yeah. And I don't know if it's unique, but it is special in many ways. I did have some comments and issues or concerns about parking, but I'm glad I listened to you, because even though actually I was going to ask the engineer I want, as long as our city engineer is okay with the explanations that you gave and the reasons why you're asking for some variances, yeah, then I think then I'm okay as well.
Thank you.
I think you know, with your experience, as long as our city engineer is okay with it, then I'm okay. But I really welcome the product that you're bringing to our city.
Thank you.
And
Sarah, could we get those changes made to their presentation, to their in the packet, so when city council sees it, they won't think there's double density than what they're actually requesting, and then parking won't become such an issue?
On the
45 to 12.
I think you do that.
On the number of units, yeah, you can send me an updated plan.
I can do that, yeah.
Sure.
That would be great.
I don't know how I got on there at 40.
Okay. Others?
We were going big.
Just a few questions. I am not quickly approaching the age where this would be, but interestingly enough, my parents are, and they live in Washington State and have pristine acreage of forest, and interestingly enough, they were visiting last week, and my dad mentioned how great it would be to move to Utah and have no property he'd be married to. So, while the demographic in the city is not substantially in need of this, our parents are. And there's not enough of it, so I think it's fantastic. I have a couple of questions. The parking data that you supplied was from 2001 and 2002?
Yeah.
Is there any reason in your mind that that would change? I know there's more trucks now than there were.
The reason we keep using that data, we paid for that a long time ago, and we keep using it on our assisted livings because all of the facilities that were tracked during those time periods were full, 100% full. So whether they're empty, there'd be less cars. So we think the data would support itself. We can update that. Again, I know Ryan Hales with Hales Engineering very well. We'll commission a parking study for this. I understand the concern because I think calculations were made off a larger AL than we're anticipating. So I think we have a lot of parking. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't commit to anything. I'm just questioning.
Oh, I'm committing.
I'm questioning just the years of the data. I mean, you don't have to go do a new one. I'm not asking.
No, that's interesting you say that. I'm glad that I sat on the planning commission in Lehigh for many years, and I appreciate you reading that study because most of my commissioners I was with would never read until the night of the planning commission. But interestingly, if you went back and looked at that data again, would anybody understand when the highest parking demand for AL is? When do you think more cars and vehicles were parked at an assisted living center? There was like 7 or 8 facilities studied. When is the busiest time?
It's 12 to 1.
Bingo night.
And it was 12 to 1 and 5 to 6, I think it was.
What day?
Sunday.
Oh, wrong. I thought it would be Sunday.
Oh, it wasn't. It's Thursdays.
That was Monday from 12 to 1. I think people get guilty for not going to see mom on Sunday. They come on Monday at noon. That's what I do. I don't know, but that is the busiest time, Monday from 12 to noon, or 12 to 1.
That was one of the things that stuck out to me most, that you said you didn't need so much parking because nobody's there. So I thought that was sad. That should be a reminder, all of us, to go visit our parents.
You should also prepare yourself because...
Oh, other than Mother's Day, if I was there,
if you think I had attention to detail, we haven't got to Commissioner Still yet.
Okay.
So prepare yourselves. Just a couple of other questions. You're suggesting there's no parking on the streets. Is there a way you're going to notify visitors? Are you going to...
It's marked red, no parking signs. Yeah, it's marked red. We mark it red. Yeah, our residents walk, so on that, you notice the profile on the one side, we have our asphalt going right to our sidewalk. I mean, you've oftentimes seen our residents walking right down the middle of the street. It's pretty quiet.
If you look at the diagram to the street, what the city engineers have requested, they request a ribbon curb, so it's a flat curb. That ribbon curb can then be painted red. We're not going to paint the sidewalk, but we'll have the ribbon curb and paint that red to delineate between the sidewalk and the
Otherwise, it's really easy. Just say, I'll just be here 10 minutes. And
Yeah. You'd be surprised how many of our residents...
Say it like you've done it.
You'd be surprised how many of our residents enforce the parking and all of our codes.
I'm sure.
It's enforced with a vengeance.
Are the single-family homes, the Paskets and the Webster's homes, are they planning on remaining in those locations?
Not yet determined. We don't know. It's an arm wrestle. Somebody will be in there.
Oh, so the houses are staying?
Oh, the houses are staying? Are you asking the Paskets are staying?
The houses are staying.
I attended the meeting as a resident.
If they're staying or not.
And I remember the original thought was to bulldoze those and put in some of the quadplexes, but I didn't see that here.
Right, so they're shown on here to, right, to have the appropriate zoning and then to stay. Sorry, I'm trying to get to it. So, yeah, their lots with the existing homes are planning to stay.
Okay. I have no other questions.
Hold on.
I'm ready.
Commissioner Steele.
I'll start with the last comment.
Thank you. Why are we rezoning the ag portion to RR?
The minimum lot size for ag is 5 acres, and this lot's going to be just over 1 acre, so it needs to be in a different zone.
Okay. I have a little bit of issue that we are doing 3 zone changes, which is spot zoning. And it would be nice if we could have limited it to 2, but I guess we can't.
Let me ask you a question about that, please. I'm sorry, Commissioner. Couldn't we zone the whole thing and then it'd be a non-conforming? We could zone it all one zone, just would remain a single-family residence in the tighter zone. No?
I wondered about that too.
I don't care what the zoning is, the house stays.
Right.
Today, if you zone it,
Then it could, but it'd have to come back, right?
well, no, if you put it all at a high-density zone,
You're right, that's probably a...
they sell that parcel where the houses are, someone can become...
I agree, no, you don't want to take that
It
risk.
also
I agree.
needs
I
to
agree.
comply with, or try to comply with the general plan as well.
Agreed.
So,
Agreed.
okay, non-issue then. What is the running slope of, or the running slope and the cross slope of the street?
The cross slope is 2%. I don't remember the exact running slope. My recollection would be about 3.8, 4.2, something like that.
Okay.
In the direction of the road, is that what you're asking?
Mm-hmm. And that would mean the sidewalk and walking area would be...
Correct. Yeah, when you get typically, obviously, then on a radius, on the inside curve, it can get a little steeper, and then on the outside curve would get a little flatter.
Okay.
We were running a profile typically along the center line.
Okay. I'm wondering why you put the pool and spa about as far away from the units that might be using it as you can. Why didn't you reverse that? Because the people...
I understand the question. You mean take and flip this? Yeah.
Because it seems like it will be, you're saying that the use of the clubhouse and the pool and spa will be used more by the how many units? 92 units?
The cottage residence?
Than the assisted living. Now, some of the assisted living might be able to use it, but it would seem that it would be, there are going to be some people that you will be serving that may be in wheelchairs. Some of them may have limited mobility, and they're going to have to, number one, drive down there. Number two, then they're going to go a circuitous route to the clubhouse and pool and spa. And it would seem to me, just logically, that you would flip that and put it closer to the people who will really be using it.
That's a good comment. May I suggest this? The clubhouse, maybe the entrance that's dotted on there should not be coming out to the main private road. Maybe it should come into the parking area so that it makes it feel like it's adjoining to be accessed easier. But one of the main reasons I think that as we looked at this, other than the topography and so forth of the site, is we try really hard to keep our AL residents as part of the community. If I flip that over and push them out even further from the community, and if I put the clubhouse on one side, it almost brings them as part of and socially interacting with the rest of the community. I think we can address access easily. Whether the clubhouse is on one side or the other, I don't think it really matters in this little area. We would rather have the clubhouse as what people see as they come in, as a showpiece, because it really is the most expensive part of our community. And keep the AL in the community and not outside the community.
Well, and I've had experience with my mother, and we've had experience with 3 facilities. I would tell you that, yeah, it's nice to have them as part of the community, but also that brings in bugs, like viruses. And so sometimes it's better to have the assisted living people who have reduced or compromised immune systems a little further away from the people that would be coming in that might, and you're talking about birthday parties and things like that, and coming in, you might think about flipping it. I won't go any further there. One of the problems that I had was that parking is a real issue, and I understand it's a lot better now that you have told us that it's 12 units, but I had the experience with my mother that she was sick, and I needed to go get her to a doctor. And where she was living had absolutely no parking places that I could get into. It was full. And I had to park where the ambulance is supposed to go in order to go. And she lived down the hall and around, so it took a while. And my very first stop after I let her out and took her back to her room was I went to the planning department of that city. And that's how I met one of our past planning directors, because I read him the Riot Act. Why did you let this happen? And what had happened is that the clubhouse was being used by somebody that was taking all the parking. So in that respect, I'm a little concerned when you talk about that it will be used for parties and whatnot, that the people that come to those are going to probably take the parking that you would have for the assisted living. And that is a little bit of concern. I would like to see you have just a little bit more parking, if at all possible. So you can play with the flipping it and whatnot. How many staff do you have on duty during the day?
Well, it depends. That's a good question. We exceed the Board of Health, standard to be licensed. We have to have our staff there. But that's a good question. I don't know.
That would make a big difference in how I look at your parking. Because, and you also will probably have some kind of a vehicle for transport?
At peak times, transport bus? Mm-hmm. We share it with our other 3 communities, so it doesn't stay here.
Okay.
But at peak times, we'll have at most 5 staff.
Okay. So that's 5 parking places that will be for staff.
What if you dedicated some of the parking for the AL?
Yeah, that's what we do normally. And interestingly enough, again, we're going to go on to, you and I, whether we go as a group, you and I are going to go to our facility, Commissioner Steele, when we have our birthday parties, everybody walks. Nobody drives to the club. We all walk down the street and to the clubhouse with our cakes. It's interesting. So it's never been an issue, but we will commission a study and ensure that we have enough parking.
Okay. Well, what I was concerned about is that I felt that you had compared apples and oranges. Because, and I wondered, Wentworth doesn't have any of these outside areas.
Wentworth is AL only.
That's what I thought. And it has no swimming pool, no spa, and no...
This is not what we sold Wentworth.
Okay. And your Alta Ridge, I am familiar with, and...
That's not ours.
I didn't think it was.
So you're looking at the parking studies? Mm-hmm. That was just random.
Okay.
That wasn't stuff that we built, we own, no.
And if you had,
Problem with the Covington, let me know.
well, you didn't have any
Oh, we
Covington.
didn't have them built back then, we were.
So, but it makes a difference. You're not going to have any memory care,
No.
and you're not going to have any rehabilitation.
No rehab, no memory care.
Are you going to have any exercise equipment in the clubhouse?
Yes.
Okay. The other thing I need to say, and I've looked at your units, and not realizing that this was, for some reason I missed it, that this was also, could be classified as assisted living, as well as...
The homes? The cottages? Yeah. It's not licensed as assisted living. It's home health and hospice. In our primary residence.
Right, but you anticipate that you can help people if they become to the point that they can't handle their own medications, or that they're in a wheelchair, but they don't want to go into assisted living, but they want to stay there.
That's right.
And age in place. You need to, there's a thing called the Fair Housing Act. And the building department's not going to check for fair housing rules. But the Fair Housing Manual states that dwellings covered by design requirements are all ground floor dwelling units in buildings containing 4 or more units. So this, the way I read it, would be covered under the Fair Housing Act. And you can, as I say, the building department's not going to check on it. But I can look at that and I can see that you don't have any roll-in showers, and you don't, the hallways, I can't tell for sure, but they don't look like they're wide enough. And so there's some things that you...
Doors are 3 foot, hallways are 4. They're wide enough.
Okay, they're wide enough, okay. But your bathrooms look a little tight for getting a wheelchair in and out.
We're going to go on a tour, you and I.
So all I would suggest is that you go online and look up the Fair Housing Design Manual, and then you can make your own determination.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think... in trying to figure out how, as we've talked about the parking, and you've changed completely from 44 to 12, so I'm not sure how to think about this. But we also need to consider, even though you say people drive or walk, some of them are going to drive, especially if it's pouring down rain or snowing.
Right.
So I think we need to figure out how to maybe park the clubhouse a little bit so that that will be covered. That'd be...
Covered, the portage share?
No, so we can park the clubhouse so that you will have enough parking for those people who drive.
Well noted.
Or for...
We'll look at that.
And for, I don't know if you allow families to get together for Thanksgiving, reserve the room to get together, or if you...
They certainly can reserve it for whatever they'd like. Most of our Thanksgiving and Christmas is in their home. They don't use this as their amenity like a apartment complex. They have in their home.
Okay.
Thanksgiving dinner there.
And that is not the dining room for the assisted living, is it?
No.
Okay.
No. They're completely separate. Matter of fact, firewall. Clubhouse and AL are completely separate, though they're attached by a wall. They're two separate, they don't access, there's no door between the two.
Okay. Well, that makes me think that you might want to look at, park a little different and maybe think about flipping.
We haven't done a lot of studies on that yet, but we will.
Okay, I think that's all for tonight.
Thanks for the concept.
Any other comments from the Planning Commission?
Yes. It's a cool product. I like it. I had to have some questions. Your service corridor, is that a common access to individual access?
Common access.
So So it's one common access to get into an area where you've got access into 4 units.
That's like a Park City lockout, we kind of like.
Right, so, but it's one key, and then all 4 units are keyed individually.
Key to the residence key, yeah. We don't have access to their units unless they give it to us.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And it's only accessible from one side.
Yes,
Not
both.
from both.
Not 2 hallways, one, right.
Okay. All my parking questions are answered. David, do you have the current zoning map you can bring up? So it's currently zoned what,
It has 3 zones on it.
today?
Yeah. It has agriculture, regional commercial, and rural residential.
Where's the current zone? Which one am I looking at?
Right, so
red.
it's all of this right here. These are all the current zones,
That's currently the way it's zoned today.
right?
So the area that they're asking to rezone to MF10, what is it zoned today?
Commercial.
It's zoned commercial right now.
Part of it.
It has 3 zones on it, so it's this area right here, and it has 3 zones on it.
The red on that map is commercial?
Right. That was rezoned when SR 73 used to be along the frontage, you
Right.
know? So, and we don't have that situation anymore.
So my concern, and I think this is a great part, my concern is rezoning or recommending a rezone to a higher density, where we're going to allow a density that was not there before. Does that make sense, my concern there? with
Yeah,
Prop
but
3,
that's
Prop
why I
6?
asked about whether we're following Prop 6 and.
Right.
And we're way below, so I don't see what the issue is. And you're basically saying if we don't rezone, then we won't allow this kind of
Well,
community.
not saying we won't allow it, not allow it maybe on that current zone, where it's.
So, keep in mind that Prop 6 did not address density, it addressed unit types. That's all that it addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And if what they're doing here is that single level attached housing, it's going to fall within those limits. So this would not be against Prop 6. Just keep that in mind. And then, of course, I don't know, there could be the debate about going from commercial to residential, maybe that actually reduces density or the impact. But just keep that in mind when you talk about that. Now, this is a legislative decision of the councils.
Right.
So you're free to make whatever recommendation you want on this. The council has a significant discretion whether or not to grant this rezone.
It's also a perception issue with the residents of the city. When you've got a piece of land that's sitting there today, not zoned for how many units? 16 houses and how many?
Our general plan recommends residential
92
here. It does
units.
recommend low-density residential.
Low-density residential. So
Yeah.
I'm talking about the perception with the residents of the city who have overwhelmingly said they don't want more high density.
Right.
That message is loud and clear. So if we recommend on this product on this location, which I think it's a great product on this location, I think that goes against some of the will of the people of the city.
One thing with this particular one, the applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting already.
I saw that in 2017. How many people have come and gone since then?
Well,
And I
resident
didn't
of that
finish, so,
subdivision, not
sorry,
me.
I didn't finish what I
okay.
was saying there.
Sorry.
So this was also noticed as a public hearing to the property
Mm-hmm.
owners within 300 feet, and because there are so many HOAs and Facebook pages, when there is a concern, news spreads.
Sure.
So, I mean, the lack of, you're seeing people here, but you're not seeing that opposition because they're aware of what the product is. So I think the neighborhood is informed.
Commissioner Chapman is a resident in that area. He wanted to say something.
Oh, I was just making a comment that Aspen Hills is very stable as far as a subdivision by itself. I was in attendance at that as a resident, of course, and I was a planning commissioner. And I think the nature of the product alleviated a lot of concerns because it's not a traditional high-density you know, we're not doing, you know, the 18-plex or the massive condos and things like that. Quiet, low traffic, and so I think there's some attributes that don't really, while it is increasing density, it's not the traditional increase that I think we're accustomed to.
Well, you're also getting rid of commercial, potentially getting rid of commercial if it's approved, which, what kind of commercial uses could theoretically go there, and what kind of traffic and impact and...
That was certainly a concern of the residents, if you look at the minutes of those, that was in the packet.
But you're doing your job, so the general plan has a recommendation for this property. You're identifying that as a concern, that you're going to pass on to the council. By all means, that's what you should do as a planning commissioner. Looking at the general plan and see what the vision is for this area and whether or not this complies with it. You make your recommendation based off of that. So I would say good job with your concern, and happy to pass that on to the council and also make that part of the question.
Has this property is this project in any form been in front of the council yet?
They see it after you.
I know, but I don't know if this is a revision from a previous plan.
No, this is the first meeting.
Excuse me, Chris. Don't all of our residential zones allow for senior living or residential facilities for the elderly?
They do. Yes.
So could we stay, could it be put in an R3 zone?
Not the fourplexes.
Not the density.
Well, because the fourplexes aren't technically a residential facility for the elderly. They don't fall under that.
Okay.
If I could add one thing, and that's try to encourage to differentiate a little bit between density and intensity of use, and you talked about it a little bit with density, number of units per acre and that, and when you have a type of facility like this where you've already indicated that the traffic is considerably less than what you'd have for a similar density, there's not going to be kids here, it's not going to impact your schools. There's a number of things here that are going to come with that type of density that aren't typical concerns.
Any other comments or concerns or?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
From the community meeting that you did hold in 2017, were there concerns raised beyond just like the height of the buildings? Did the residents, I mean, it's been all roses here with the people who've come. Was there any concerns that were aired out that you were able to?
A lot of questions, because it's kind of an unfamiliar product, but I don't think a lot of concerns. I think we answered because most of the concerns were height and view, and then traffic coming into their community. That was their concerns.
And there is in the recommended, in the conditions, and this would be up to the city council for further consideration. We can do things like development agreements, or we can do conditions where the zone isn't actually finalized until the site plan or the preliminary plat's approved. There's obviously, you know, staff anticipated there may be concerns about the particular zone, because we don't want it to get rezoned and then somebody else pick it up. And so that can be handled, and the council can choose either of those options. And so that's in here as a possible condition just for discussion or consideration. And really the council chooses which tool. However, it can go either way.
My last question was just the address of this Lehigh property that you speak of that's just like the...
Are you familiar with the Covington that we're just completing?
I'm not, but I want to be more familiar. You don't know the coordinates?
I don't, the address. It's right next to our Covington project.
Okay.
It's just east, or no, west, right across the fence is the campus.
It's called Dignity Healthcare, and there's a Covington.
No, that's not
location.
The one in south, I can, if you'd like, well, it doesn't help for this meeting.
If you don't mind sending it to me and I can forward it on.
I can send you the addresses, yeah.
Chris, to respect your concern, did you want to propose a condition or maybe some instruction to staff to visit the Prop 6 or something like that?
Well, where's the condition in here that the site plan be, or development agreement you just talked about? Oh, I see it. Number 1. My eyes are going bad, I think.
Yep, condition 1 right there.
No, I think it's a great product. I think it's needed. I'm very concerned about the density rezone.
Okay, so make sure that's noted in the packet for the, okay. Any other comments? All right, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, hold on. I haven't said anything. I have my own notes.
Let the chair reflect that he has no questions.
That's not true. Okay, so you did mention that you didn't have any trip hazards. Just let me introduce you to our area. This is pretty much all liquefaction. Any concrete surface you put in, driveway, sidewalk, they all split and crack, and then you'll have that. So either get a good grinder or prep your soil really well because your concrete's going to shift whether you want it to or not. So if anybody in here hasn't experienced that, raise your hand. There you go. Second thing, you mentioned Chuckarama. Do you have any data that supports that Chuckarama will come in after you build? Okay.
No,
Sarah.
Do you want to see my membership card?
Just let me borrow it. I was just kidding. Sarah, you had, were there 3 things you wanted to address? One was road width.
Parking.
Right? Second one?
The guest parking at the end of the driveways, and then and we've already talked about the number of parking at the assisted living.
Okay, so.
Parking at the assisted living, the street cross-section, which would require either a development agreement or a change to standard. And then the guest stalls here being at the end of the driveway.
So are you providing us options or just want us to give you feedback?
Well, this is so the applicant needs your feedback.
Okay, so I'm just going to open this up to us. We've all discussed the parking. They came in with concerns because we thought there were a lot more people in the building. Now that we've brought it down to 12, I'm just wondering if we still have a concern about the number of parking and the parking on the street or guest parking. Is that still an issue as much as it was previously?
I just wanted to confirm, Sarah, did you think it was 49 or did you think it was 12?
No, I thought it was 45 because I was
45?
on the plan.
Okay, then that resolves it for me.
Anybody else still have concerns about parking with that? I think we did have someone on the clubhouse. We had Commissioner Karn had a concern with separating the assisted living parking from the clubhouse. I was wondering how you did that, but yeah, maybe a sign, but
Designating the use, I think that's fine.
okay. And then there's, were there any other comments on parking?
No, I would certainly have the same concern with just the clubhouse assisted living parking.
Okay, something that delineates.
Signage or paint marks or something.
Or just have a lot more of it. Okay, and then the road width, 23 versus 20. 26 versus 29.
And then the sidewalks. So our standards for private streets have wider sidewalks, wider asphalt, and then curb on both sides.
That is an administrative decision, right?
Right, and really I think that can be, that would feedback is beneficial, however, they make that decision.
An alteration to that would be a policy decision.
Right.
But whether or not it complies, of course, is administrative.
Okay. So do you still need these 3 buy-ins from us, or are you good with them?
Well, yeah, so the applicant needs clear direction on all 3 of those topics.
Okay, so before we entertain a motion, do we want to consider putting in a condition to higher parking?
So the only thing that you're making a motion on is the rezone and the general plan amendment. The concept plan is just strictly feedback, so you're just giving them direction to move forward. So these topics related to parking and the road don't need to be.
Thank you for clarifying that, so. Sorry? Do you want to go down? Does anybody want to give their feedback?
I will.
Commissioner Steele.
Of course. I can see what they're saying about the street cross-section. I'd like to see the 8-foot sidewalk, or the 6-foot. That just will help if people are walking, that you can walk side by side and not have to be one after the other. I think that's just a good idea. As far as the parking, and the parking on the assisted living end, I've made my comments about that. I think we need to look a little further. You need to have, it probably, I'm going back and forth in my mind, because you'll need 5 of those will be taken by staff. And then, since the bus doesn't stop, or it doesn't stay there, the transport vehicle, and then you need, for that number of parking places, and I believe there's a total of 21?
25. Oh, we're on, yeah.
3 will be taken away, so that'll only be 19.
You're taken away.
So that's 1 disabled stall, and that will take up the equivalent of almost 2 stalls, so you lose 1 there. If they add some under the portico, that parking probably is sufficient. Now, as far as what the staff has suggested for the parking within the area of the quads or fourplexes, which hat do you want me to put on? I could argue it either way. I can see their point of view, and that you could park 2 cars in front of the garage and still have a driveway, and you still have 2 at the end, which would be a half per unit. There's a part of me that thinks that you really do need to have a little area of parking so that for overflow, and have 1 accessible parking space within that grouping. Because if you're older and it's likely you will have someone coming to see you that, even if you're not disabled, they may be mobility impaired. So I think you need to think about that. You've done a real good job on trip hazards and all of that, but I think that might be something to at least consider. And I agree with you on that.
Okay, so generally, let's start with road width, 26 versus 29. What's our consensus?
I'm good with 26 if there's no parking.
I'm good with 26 as long as the city engineer is.
Same.
Same.
I'll be outvoted. I would prefer to see the 29, because I think people are, if we don't provide extra parking somewhere, they're going to park on the street nearest where they're visiting.
And the 26 is only for the private road. The other one, there's cul-de-sacs, 29.
You tow in your communities?
What?
Do your communities tow? If someone parks on the street?
Sure. We've never had a problem. We've never had a
But
problem.
you don't contract with a tow company to patrol?
Absolutely.
And my response, since everybody else voted, I wrote that I would defer to the experience of the applicant, because he has come in and he's answered all our questions, and his responses have been fantastic. So, but again, I'm not the professional.
When we
The
come back
engineer,
before you, we will have a full-on traffic study that will show you everything you're talking about.
I think that'll be valuable, and you have to convince the engineer.
Done.
Okay. Parking in the quads. Good as it is, need more?
When you say good as it is that with the 2 additional spots?
The 2 that we had in our packet.
I see that as valuable.
So I'm looking at this because of how the applicant explained it, that this is really a regular community. I mean, there may be multifamily homes, but they're still homes. It's like any other community, except it's a specialized, maybe like a gated type of community, so it's special in that way. But if in a regular community we don't require all this kind of parking other than standard code parking, I don't see why we really have to require it for most of the regular homes. And so if you're providing sufficient parking, even if it is in the driveway, it's what we do with most homes.
I appreciate what you just said. I've heard several times, we meet code, but everybody wants more than code. And what we're arguing is we use less than code, but we're providing more than code. So, guys, we'll never use this parking.
This is meeting code, because our code doesn't count the driveway as guest parking. So it's meeting code, and then the only recommendation was that that the guest parking be central to the units rather than just one per fourplex. That was the staff comment.
I understand, and I think it's a good recommendation that I'm sure that you would probably look at. But as far as me voting for a recommendation and approval, I'm okay with it because, again, we don't really have guest parking at normal homes. And we do have people with wheelchair access, and they use our driveways, and they're fine. So I don't really have that big an issue with that. So I would probably be just okay with recommending it as it is at this point. But if you do consider it, great.
Anyone else?
One thing, if I can make a point on that, about the quad parking. So you've got a common driveway that 4 units use. You got 2 guest stalls, you got 2 in front of each garage. So technically there could be 10 guest stalls within each driveway right there. I would suspect if there's a sense of community there, I wouldn't be, if I lived there, I could go to my neighbor, hey, do you mind if somebody parks in front of your garage? If someone's coming over, or something. I just think the parking from what I see, I don't think the parking in this case would be an issue. I think there's sufficient parking between those units in that driveway.
The clarification that there's 4 garages per unit, right? 4 2-car garages changes the game, I think.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I do think, my experience is that one of those stalls in the garage will be full of stuff and the other one will have a car. So, but.
And I'm leaning towards what you have presented, because if I'm old, I don't want to walk real far to my house.
Well, not only that, is if you can envision this, and I can articulate this correctly, the front drives is where our residents doll up and plant their roses, and we don't want to take that away with parking. We want the parking to be back, access to residents, front doors, let the front drives be part of the HOA and have the beauty that we intend it to be.
Okay, and then I'm really, sorry not to throw a wrench in it, but the only thing I had trouble with was the shared driveway, and it scares me because you have grandkids around and people driving through there, so. But I can't fix all the problems in the world. Let's see, so we have that one, road width, guest parking, what was everybody's feeling? I guess we said we're okay, majority is okay where it is. And then the number of parking stalls, we wanted to increase that around the clubhouse, is that what we wanted?
They said they could put maybe 3 more in under the portico.
Right.
And I think that would probably.
Thank you.
Probably.
They put those 3 in, they eliminated a few for handicap and an island.
Yeah, so I think that.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we've discussed this fully. I'll entertain a motion.
Can I ask one more question?
Sorry, you did have one more question.
And I'm surprised it hasn't been brought up. You mentioned this as a walking community, but I didn't see, or you haven't said anything about any like green space or amenities for grandkids or walking a dog. Is there going to be grass where, people can walk their poodles or St. Bernards? I don't know.
Yeah, we haven't done a landscape plan, but highly.
I don't know that it's necessary now.
Right.
But in the future, I know that's something that we're going to be looking at, is any amenities for grandkids.
Thank you for reminding us.
Swings for old couples. I'm sure old couples love to hold hands and swing.
They do.
Park benches, there you go, like a swinging bench, or, park benches and, yeah. Let the dog run a little bit.
Exactly. We also have an opportunity on the north end to access, I think, somewhere the walking trail along the north side of our property too. So yeah, that is absolutely right.
I'm happy to do motions. I need your.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation, a recommendation to the City Council for approval of the proposed rezones and general plan amendments with the findings and conditions outlined below, with an emphasis on condition number 1, if that needs to be an emphasis.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Kilgore. Any question on the motion?
I don't like the rezone.
Did you?
I don't have a question.
Did you want to
I'm just-
articulate why?
No, I'm not comfortable with the high-density rezone.
Okay. Any other questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Okay. Approval of minutes, June 28th, 2018. I don't have any revisions. Commissioner Kilgore?
While he's finding those, I will be abstaining.
The line, excuse me, line 145, no, I'm sorry, line 246. I think my comment was flashing green light, not flashing red light. Is that on line 246? Yeah. Let's make sure.
See that?
See, it says flashing, yeah, because I was saying flashing green light to allow cars to go through.
246?
Line 246. Wait, let me make sure though.
Double check that.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, so I want, what my comment was, the primary direction, the primary traffic should have a flashing green light, which means you could go through, and then the secondary traffic should have a flashing red light to make them stop. That's at night.
I see what you're talking about.
Any other comments, revisions, changes?
Yeah, and then I mentioned this earlier, but line 361 should be 2000, I said 2012, but I think it should be something else. Yeah.
And Commissioner Anderson, you're going to abstain as well? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes from June 28th, 2018.
We have a motion? Second? We have a second. Question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Reports of action. David Stroud.
None.
Commission comments. I want to remind Commissioner Karn, you had suggested a code for private entrances for private communities. How do we go, did you want to?
I don't know what action can be taken there. I know that my neighborhood was affected directly by this. I live in a private neighborhood that we gate, and the city forced a developer to provide access to a neighborhood south of us for continuity, which now I have, as the HOA president, have to pay to gate to limit the continuity. So I think that needs to be looked at with private communities.
And in the case of an emergency, can people get out?
All emergency personnel have access to the community 24 hours a day.
So do they have egress instead of ingress? I mean,
They've got both access, in and out. It's through, we've got siren boxes, they also have keys.
You have to maintain the gate, you have to.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's a decision by a private landowner
So,
to pay for that stuff.
if he wants to bring this up for a potential code revision or review, how does he do that?
My initial thought is that maybe you should ask Mark Christensen. I feel like the particular topic is a Saratoga Springs Development City conversation. Obviously in the case of emergencies, and the reason the Saratoga Springs Development is feeling that burden is because of the construction, and then there's been times when,
That is true, but SSD is registered as a private gated community with the state, and it was from the beginning.
So I guess what I'm saying is I feel like the appropriate forum is for SSD to talk to the city manager or the city council, not for us to.
It is a city issue, though, because like with this
And that's what I'm
neighborhood.
saying, the city, like, planning staff
Yeah.
isn't the right people to talk.
Chris, can you talk to
Above our
Mark?
head.
Yeah, I'll talk to Mark. I don't think it's going to go anywhere because I know members of the council like community continuity, even though it infringes on private property owners.
I'm sure Mark will talk to you.
It'd also be interesting, because doesn't your development have a city-owned park?
It requires public access.
And so I don't
That
know,
could
I
be
mean,
pedestrian access.
rather than driving on the private
You
roads.
walk in.
So, I mean, that's I think an interesting consideration is if
Yeah.
there's city.
Yeah, we've taken that into
Maintained.
consideration. It is what it is, and, you know, our particular neighborhood will pay to put a gate there and block the access, the continuity. But like for this community where they would like to have a gate, they're gonna have to do the same thing. They'll just gate, if they want to, inside that cul-de-sac where those 16 homes are.
Sounds like a good time to talk to Mark quick.
Yeah, I'll take it offline.
Okay, excellent. Director's report.
Nothing to report this time, though we did get the Lexington Green, the apartment development site plan in. And if you'll recall, with the changes made by the city council, you are now the land use authority for site plans. So you will not be recommending that onto the city council, it will stop with you. We don't have a date that's coming yet, they want us, you know, obviously ASAP like any developer, but we'll have to go through the process and that will be coming back to you. You
All right.
kind of, little worried there, Commissioner Steele?
Granted, it's granted density. There's not nothing we can do about that.
The
Apartments, we
site
do, the
plan
site
for the
plan for the
apartments.
apartments.
But they do have the development agreement, which makes some stipulations, and so I don't think those would be in painful or lengthy as the last items that have taken, what, 10 years maybe? So,
All right, we're going to bounce back to commission comments. Bryce Anderson, would you introduce us? Sorry that this is like an afterthought, but it is. So we'd like to know a little bit about you. Tell us about
So
yourself.
I live up off of Grandview, and I've only lived in Saratoga Springs for about 6 months. Actually, I moved from Orem, but I've had family out here for 13 years, I think. Brothers, a couple brothers who live here. There's one in Sunrise Meadows, one down in Loch Lomond. And anyway, I work for the LDS Church, and I have soon-to-be 5 kids, one on the way, 4 right now, with one on the way. And I went to BYU, got a master's in public administration. So, what questions do you have for me?
You moved onto Grandview right in the middle of the mess.
What does that mean?
The UDOT construction.
Oh, yeah.
Right at the end of Grandview, so. Yeah,
That's right.
it's all gonna be better.
That's right. That's
All right, well, we hope you get better quickly with your
Thanks.
appendix.
Yeah, I'm ready to go lay down.
All right. Look like you need to. All right, without objection, we adjourn.
Thank you.